let's take a look at this 6-year-old nursing education brand making $2,042,000 a year in profit and listed for sale at an asking price of $9,200,000. That is a 4.5x valuation multiple. Is it worth that? Well, I'm going to break it down here and share my quick take on this business's valuation. I'm going to start by going over some of the key details of the listing, some of the things that really matter, some of the things you might want to consider or flesh out more if you're interested in acquiring this business, share some of my own experience-based insight into this business model because I actually own a professional education e-learning business. I acquired that one. And then ultimately, my quick take on the business's valuation. So let's just unpack it here. We're going to start by skimming over the details. First thing, SBA pre-qualified. Okay, we'll come back to that. We're going to kind of go through the details and come back to it. $2 million of SDE, 14% year-over-year growth, 3 million followers, 67% margins. Let me just underline that one. I will definitely want to come back to that. It is doing close to $6 million a year in revenue, basically $6 million in revenue, and generating income of $2 million, as we know. It is a 6-year-old company that is the #1 direct-to-consumer nursing education brand in North America, generating $6 million in trailing 12 months revenue, has a 14.3% year-over-year growth, 67.6% margin, founded in 2019 by a registered nurse who created simplified study materials during her accelerated nursing program. The business grew from Etsy into a trusted Shopify brand with more than 3 million social media followers. Their nursing school bundle is the most recognized supplemental resource for nursing students nationwide. They have got a 12-person team led by a COO, Chief Operating Officer, with 4 years of tenure, who handles all operations, content production, and marketing execution. They've got diversified traffic, with Google being 18, paid Google being 18%, organic search 16%, email, SMS 15%, organic social 32%, paid social 11%, and referral 9%. 425,000 email subscribers generating 7 to 18K per campaign, and AOV of $115 to $125. They've got a handful of growth paths here. If you write the $9.2 million check, it is all yours. The growth is all yours. And this is interesting down here. After 6 years, the owners would like to focus on family, with the founder seeking 10 to 20% equity retention and providing 1 to 4 years for filming and marketing continuity at 15 to 20 hours weekly. There's a lot to talk about here. Let's first talk about this SBA pre-qualified. And I have to call this out because there is no such thing as SBA pre-qualification. There's basically SBA eligible or SBA not disqualified for some reason. In online businesses, that is commonly the business is not, a U.S.-based business with its own independent U.S. tax returns subsequent to say it is not, or it could be subsequent to say with the independent tax returns caveat there, it could be a carve-out and not have independent tax returns, and therefore it is not SBA eligible for that reason, or would be very, very, very difficult to get SBA finance. So this one's not SBA disqualified, but the SBA limit is, I think, $5 million. So you would have to bring, at this asking price, $4.2 million to the table to get under that SBA threshold. So you got to bring $4.2 million to the table. Maybe a portion of that gets reduced by seller financing or the seller carrying equity, but the seller carrying equity is also a problem in the business. I think there are some caveats with the SBA that says a seller cannot carry equity for more than 1 year, or if they are not carrying equity, or if they are carrying equity, they have to personally guarantee the loan. There's some caveats around this here which may kind of trip things up. I think the SBA pre-qualified here is a bit of a stretch. It's SBA eligible, for $5 million, yes, but A, you got to bring a lot of capital to the table, other than the typical 15 to 20%, maybe even less in some cases, that you would for an SBA loan. And B, you've got to work out what's up with this equity here. There's certainly some rule around this that I've heard about. I'm just not familiar with the specifics. If you know what they are, let me know in the comments, okay? So carrying down here and fleshing out these details a little bit more, 14.3% year-over-year growth. That is very nice. We'll talk about that when I talk about the multiple and the valuation. 67.6% gross margin. Okay, well, we can see that they're operating at about a 33% or 1/3 net margin. So after they're delivering their product, well, they've got, after delivering the product with cost of goods, and backing out the net, they're spending 33% somewhere on either selling or administrative. Two things jump out at me here. Number one, the 67.6% margin is low as a gross margin for a business that is selling a digital product. Okay, so typically these businesses have a much higher margin, gross margin, because the product is digital. There's fundamentally no cost of goods sold with digital product businesses. Not sure what's going on with this. Maybe they're selling something physical because they say bundle, the nursing school bundle. The word bundle obviously can be applied to digital products, but for some reason, in context here of the gross margin that's lower than expected, it is ringing the bell of maybe a physical product or maybe has some physical products with it. Certainly want to flesh that out. Okay. And then they say, founded by a registered nurse. I put a little question mark next to that, and we kind of get a little bit more detail into this, but my thought is, well, how involved in the actual process or the courses is this nurse? Do you need to be a registered nurse to operate this business? Now, they say they've got a 12-person team led by a COO with 4 years of tenure. Certainly going to want to make sure that COO stays on with the business, likely has a non-compete, considering the size of this business, and an employment contract also, because this is not a small online business. And then diversified traffic includes all of this. I like this a lot because this is telling me, hey, the business is not dependent on one platform for customer acquisition. They're getting stuff from Google Organic, or Google Paid, Google Organic. They've got some remarketing going on here. They've got organic social. It's very high for organic social, 32% of all the traffic that's generating the $6 million a year in revenue. Paid social, they've got referral. They're doing quite well with all of this marketing here. And 3PL. I highlighted this when I was kind of skimming through it. Okay, so that is implying, I overlooked this as I was coming back through it for this video. This is also implying that there is some type of physical product with this business as well. So this thing also has some physical product. Maybe, I doubt it's entirely physical product because they're selling courses, but there's some physical product going on with it here. And they call out the possible growth of immediate cost optimization through 3PL transition projects. Through 3PL transition projects $208K in annual savings by reducing per order fulfillment from $19 to $14.78. Amazon FBA provides quick wins as the company captures less than 1% of Amazon. So it's really two separate things there. And that is, number one, they're saying you can switch our 3PL, at least that's how I'm reading it, to a lower 3PL and save money there. You can scale up Amazon FBA to grow it. Other things that they mention include creating other products, I think, prerequisite product creation. So creating products that are prerequisites to what they sell. NCLEX test prep represents the highest value opportunity as nursing graduates invest heavily in exam prep. In this company's established trust with 3 million positions, it to capture the market. Membership monetization offers recurring revenue potential. Okay, so creating some type of community for the nurses. I think all of these are great. My only question is, why haven't they done these yet? Have they done them? Have they tried them and failed? That's always something that kind of sticks out in my mind because I've seen this happen where sellers are like, hey, you can try these things, but then if you really dig into the details or start looking at artifacts of the business, you find that they have tried them and failed. That's always important to keep that in mind. And finally, down here, after 6 years, the owners would like to focus on family, with the founder seeking 10 to 20% equity retention and providing 1 to 4 years for filming and marketing continuity. On one hand, this is good. It shows that the seller has a vested interest in the business. On the other hand, I'm wondering just how ingrained in the content is the seller and the founder. Because if they're really ingrained in it, that is an obstacle to overcome. If all of these customers are coming because of the seller's persona themselves. Now, I'm not getting that vibe from this business considering the scale at $6 million in revenue, and they're claiming it's the #1 direct-to-consumer nursing education brand. And they've got the 3PL thing, which indicates they've got physical products. I'm not getting vibes that the seller is really, or that the brand and the business is really a seller persona-driven business. Let me know if you disagree with me on that, but that's the vibe that I'm getting here, that's not the case. But still, I'd want to see exactly what this seller, needs to be involved in the business for, especially considering they've got a 12-person team led by a COO. Ideally, the seller has made a substantial reduction in content in the last year or two, or has made a substantial reduction in appearance in content in the last year or two, and is progressively getting out of the business. Right? And then, of course, aside from that, like I already mentioned, this creates a problem with the SBA eligibility. On that note, what is my take on the business's valuation? Is it worth the 4.5x? Let me know your thoughts before I share mine. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And at this point, if you're finding this video helpful or insightful, you know the drill. Smash that like button to help me out in the YouTube algorithm. Now, my thought on the 4.5x valuation multiple and my approach to valuing businesses is to assign a valuation multiple to the business unit as it exists, and then multiply that by the forecasted profitability of the business under your ownership, considering any expenses that you would incur, right? Or maybe advantages that you might have, in acquiring the businesses, economies of scale that you could instantly add to it. I really don't have any to add because I'm not, I guess I'm not in the nursing education space. Maybe some overhead, but I really wouldn't want to pull my staff away from the businesses that we have, right? So I can't really add anything, but it's a pretty robust business. I don't see it adding much. I don't feel like there's much that would need to be covered there. But if there were, and before we get to that, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just talk about the business unit as a whole and the valuation multiple. We've got a large online education brand that seems to have a combination of digital and physical products. They're spitting off healthy margins. They've got a robust team. They've got robust traffic sources, so they don't have platform risk. The only knock that I really see on this business is whatever is up with the seller, or in the seller's involvement in the marketing. So considering that, it's a digital product business generating these numbers, I think it's really valued, fair to slightly high side of fair, of course, as you would expect any business to be listed at the 4.5x valuation multiple. The only thing that would really make this business better is if the seller did not need to be involved in the content at all. But the seller needing to be involved in there, is kind of a challenging scenario, right? I know the seller is willing to stay on and they'd like to, have 10 to 20% equity, but that's really hard to work with as the buyer of the business. It sounds good. it sounds good, but in theory, it does not work out. Or not in theory, in practice, it does not work out. And that is why the SBA has rules around how long a seller can be involved with the business after closing. And I think, if my memory serves me correctly, and mind you, I've never had to dive deep into these rules. This is all just kind of stuff that I've skimmed over or heard through my course of business acquisitions and sales. Is that if they're remaining on longer than 1 year, I think they have to personally guarantee it as well. But the thing is that new buyers, the new owner, typically does not work well with the seller going forward after a certain period, right? At first, there's like a little honeymoon phase, everybody's doing well, and then the new buyer wants to do things, seller doesn't agree with them. In this case, there's equity at stake, and then the two start fighting. So I really don't like this, and I don't like that it implies that the seller might need to be involved for some reason. So, if the seller really needs to be involved, then a 4.5x multiple is definitely high, and I think a 4 is reasonable, considering there is a feasible plan and practical plan to get the seller out of there. All right, so let's just say that, it's valued, that a fair value is, say, a 4.2x on the business unit. You look at it and you're like, okay, the seller is fairly involved in here, but we can acquire this business and phase them out in the next 6 months because there have been team members identified that can step up and create the content. The value of that would also need to be adjusted in the future, in the future income potential of the business. So let's just kind of run a scenario here under that and say you've got to take on the project of replacing this seller. All right, in the content of the business, it's worth, at this time, the valuation multiple we're assigning to the business as a whole is a 4.2x. Okay, what's going to happen to the income here? Well, let's just say that the income is going to go down by, $150,000, because you have to get a skilled content creator in there, somebody that is a nurse, somebody that can get on camera and speak well, better than I do, and you've got to get the facility set up. Maybe you've got to get, a camera person involved. I don't really know what all is going to, what all this is going to entail. Maybe you have to set up a studio. I mean, that would kind of be the bear case, is you actually have to set up a studio somewhere. If this seller was doing all of the content creation from their home studio, you got to get a studio. Let's just say it's $150,000 a year. Okay. We have to adjust the income for that going forward, but there's a 14.3% growth rate that the business is on. So the business is growing. All right, so if you acquire this business here, maybe the 14.3% is a little lofty, but let's just say it grows 10%, right? And we're going to assume that the margin and all that stays the same. We'll factor out that additional $150,000 expense here in a second, but the business grows 10% in the next year. That's what is forecasted. The growth rate supports it. It's been growing year over year for a while. Right. The forward income, or the forward-looking income over the next 12 months is $2,246,000. But then we got to reduce that by 150 for, what is going to be production costs or replacing the seller. Then the income looks like $2,096,000 is what you would take and put in your own pocket under your ownership. Again, you have to adjust this for any other things you realize as you're kind of vetting the business and doing due diligence, and then multiply that by the valuation multiple that in my opinion, this business would be fairly valued at, considering some assumptions that we've already discussed, 4.2. And I would say that a fair value on this business here is $8,804,000. What is your take on my opinion of this business's valuation and the valuation multiple? Let me know in the comments below. And again, if you found this video helpful or insightful, you know the drill. Smash that like button to help me out in the YouTube algorithm. I am calling it a wrap and signing off on that note.